Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Greetings, everyone, and I hope you can hear me clearly. I am sitting in Mauritius at the moment. The connection is pretty good. We're on fiber here, but if for some reason some strange things happen, please do forgive me. Right, today's presentation is, it's going to be a little fast-paced, and it's going to be on, I'm going to give you an overview of ITIL and ISO 20000. I'll speak to you about the fundamentals only and some of the necessary compliance synergies, and give you some hints as to what a compliant ISO 20000 system might look like with ITIL as the adopted IT strategy. All right, so I'm going to go quite quickly through some of the slides, but I will spend a little bit of time on sort of the overview of ITIL and the overview of ISO 20000. This is obviously not a webinar to teach you how to implement or how to be compliant, but rather to just give you an idea of where you need to look to get these things into place so that they are synchronized. Right, so we're going to talk about what is ITIL, or ITIL, as some people might say, what is ISO 20000, and sometimes I do use the word 20K, it's naughty, so forgive me if I do. A little bit about compliance, the shell word, and then a little bit about compliance and auditors, just to make you feel a little bit comfortable about taking your service management system through to a compliant standard. Okay, so what is ITIL? Right, it's become increasingly widely recognized that information is the most important strategic resource that any organization has to manage. Okay, and obviously, and that's my top two bullets there. Sorry, it doesn't look like English, but that's how I wanted to say it. And key to the collection, analysis, production, and distribution of information within any organization is the quality of IT provided by the business. Okay, so this is quite important where ITIL is concerned. And obviously, because it's IT and it's going to provide a service, you need a reasonable or a level of investment for strategic organizational assets. This is where ITIL is now trying to take you. It's saying it's no longer a bunch of computers stuck in a warehouse. You now need to get all the stuff together and make it work nicely, and obviously it needs to be able to deliver what the customer needs at the time the customer needs it. So there are some issues facing managers. Is strategic planning. Sometimes the businesses are too busy and you don't have the time to sit down and do some proper strategic planning. Integrating and aligning business goals, that's usually a case where you have either a change in organizational structure, joining of companies, new services coming on, technology disruptors, and all those kinds of things. Project delivery success, of course, is always based around timelines, decent project management, and usually financial constraints in some cases. Delivering business justified IT services is sometimes you have your own business as usual stuff, and then the business comes along and it says, but we need this and we have to have it, and suddenly you have to drop everything, go and do it. So it is a difficulty. And then managing constant business and IT change. We all know these days that change is a constant these days. Things are changing all over. All right, so what's the ITIL framework? All right, I'm not going to go into the background of ITIL or ITIL. I'm not, it's an infrastructure library. There's a couple of historical movements, but it has been developed by the offices in the UK. Sorry, I missed something there. And it's a best practice guidance for IT service management. Okay, the 2011 version was intended as an update. It became a little bit more than an update. It was quite a significant change. And so you get these 5 volumes. There's actually 6 as a guidance volume as well. So you get the which explain what you need in order to deliver service strategy. Okay, and if you look at this as a sort of a wheel, the service strategy sits at the core of the wheel. Service design, transition, and operation sits around the outside, and sits in the middle of the wheel, outside the service strategy, and then continual service improvement surrounds the whole wheel. So it's improvement is embodied in every single cycle of putting in a service management, IT service management structure. All right, so I'll go through the 5 sections of ITIL as it's structured, the 5 volumes. Okay, so these are books that you can buy. You can also go on courses for ITIL and become qualified either in foundation or as a manager, and it's got there's a strategy for qualification to a higher level. You might also, with ITIL, only want to go, for argument's sake, those that are responsible for DR might only want to go and just do the DR part of an ITIL course. So it's quite a well-structured set of courses, and these are the 5 volumes that cover everything within ITIL. So your service strategy is basically for transforming your service management into a strategic asset. Okay, that's what it is. Right, so you're now taking it from just being a bunch of computers, and you're saying to it, actually, you know what, we can make these things perform in such a way that they can deliver revenues and improve our customer service. So these are the requirements are identified and agreed in this stage. So when you talk about a service strategy, okay, before you even go and make any changes, you get everything agreed. Okay, so there's all sorts of, if any of you have done a Prince 2 course, for argument's sake, this is where you would now start doing business cases and all that information, understanding exactly what the customer wants, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, the processes you're going to put in place. These will change throughout your if you are putting an ITIL structure in place for the first time. And if you do have an ITIL structure in place, when you come around to do your continuous development, you will look at these things and do them again. All right, so ITIL's kind of structured it has concepts, it has processes, it talks about resources. So I'll go through all of them very quickly, just to give you an idea of, right, that's where we want to go, of how it's structured, and how you can read the volumes and take out of it what you need for your own IT infrastructure. And I do need to say this. You take out of ITIL what you need. You don't have to have all of this, but just be wary. If you are going to go for compliance, when I get to the ISO 20000 side of things, there are things you have to have in there. So if you don't choose a particular component of the ITIL structure because you just feel there's no funding or not availability, then you need to qualify in ISO 20000 why that is not there. Okay. All right, so if we go look at concepts in terms of service strategy, they talk about the 4 Ps. They do this sort of thing, which is the perspective, the distinctive vision and direction. So where's the business going? What does it see? How long forward is it looking? All those kinds of things. And therefore, what is our plan going to be? Are we going to do refresh technology in 5 years' time, or when it happens? The position, the basis on which the provider will compete. So what's our market space look like? How are we going to compete? ITIL talks a lot about competition. Planning is how the provider will achieve their vision. Okay, so you as a provider, how you're going to achieve it, whether you are actually providing the physical infrastructure or not. If you're providing the service, this is what they're talking about. And then the pattern, which is the fundamental way of doing things. So this is the distinctive patterns in decisions and actions over time. Right, and there, I'm not going to go through all of these. There, it talks about other concepts, which is service value, which is quite important. If you go and look at the ITIL sort of overview, it will flesh these things out for you. Okay. So service value, the most important part of the service value side is the warranty. In other words, how the service is delivered and its fitness for use. Okay. And in terms of its availability, capacity, continuity, and security. So now we're starting to chuck in a whole bunch of other standards there as well once we go through ITIL. ITIL doesn't say that you must run off now and comply with 100 other compliance standards, but it's important that you know those other standards exist. You may actually have them in place already, which means you don't have to go and repeat the work that ITIL is suggesting you have in place here. The service management as a strategic asset, critical success factors, obviously you will define those. Service-oriented accounting, there's a financial aspect to ITIL. They measure a lot of things in terms of finance, how much of the cost, how much revenue we're getting out of it, and so forth. And then service provisioning models. So there's different types of models for the actual business itself. And then organization design and development. These are all the concepts that ITIL deals with. You can go and have a look at them. They're very voluminous. They will take you through everything and anything you need to know in setting up your strategy. So now we move on to looking at their processes. Now, ISO 20000 is very process driven, and we'll get there. So I've repeated those 3 top bullets there just for your convenience. And the 3 important processes that ITIL decides it would like to see, it doesn't say this is the end of the story. You can put other processes in place, by the way. So financial management, service portfolio management, demand management are 3 of the processes. Just to give you an idea what those are quickly, the financial management is basically the provider's budgeting, accounting, and charging requirements. Okay, this is part of your strategy. You need to know how you're going to charge, why you're going to charge it, and what the cost factors are that are creating those charges. Because maybe at this point in time is when you decide not to go ahead because it's too expensive. It's kind of an example. Okay, the service portfolio management, or SPM as it's often referred to, is the proactive management of the investment. Okay, so that's the portfolio. And then demand management, which is very important, because a poorly managed demand is obviously going to be a source of risk. Then they talk about roles and responsibilities. They don't, it's not fully inclusive. So these are what they reckon is you start as a business relationship manager. He goes and finds out what the customer wants. The product manager, they're going to be the people that are going to try and put this thing together. And the sourcing officer is going to find all the resources, which don't necessarily mean just IT resources. It could also be people and or third-party suppliers. All right, so now we move on to the service design. So now we've done our strategy, we've decided what we're going to do, we're looking at our whole infrastructure, and we say, okay, we need to realize our strategy. So we're obviously going to design an IT service now. Okay, so we've got sign off on most of the things, we've got budget approval. We say, okay, now let's see how we can design everything within the constraints of what was decided at the strategy level, which is obviously a senior management product. So they again are principles of service design. These are the 4 Ps. Again, it's people, products, processes, and partners. By the way, not all 5 volumes have Ps. It's just the first 2. So people, the people, skills, and competencies involved in the provision of IT services. There you go. Products, the technology and management systems used in the delivery of the IT services. Processes, everything in ISO 20000 is process driven. You need all the processes. The processes, roles, and activities involved in the provision. So your company decides what those processes are going to be. Okay, so you go through ITIL, you have a look at all the stuff, you cherry pick what you want. Ideally, if you can, you put everything in place, but sometimes you might decide that a particular aspect of ITIL is not necessary. But just remember, for ISO 20000, you have to qualify why you're not doing that. Why, it could be a financial thing, it could be because it's mixed with some other process that you've got. All right, there's 5 aspects of service design, and that's that comes about with the solutions, tools, architecture, process, and measurement, and that's new or change services, service management, and the likes of that. And then, of course, your service design package, which basically defines all aspects of your IT service and its requirements through each stage of its life cycle. So service design package will change over time. Okay, it's your living document, basically. Every time there's a major change, you go and change it. Right, so there's a whole bunch of processes for you. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on what these are. They're pretty self-explanatory in the text there. But if you have a look, there's a service catalog management. Now, ISO 20000 requires that as a document. Okay, so just bear that in mind. The service level management of SLMs, as a call. Obviously, you need to monitor your service level, and obviously, if it's not doing well, you need to improve it somehow. And if it's doing very well, you need to maintain it at that level, or maybe even challenge yourself and go to a higher level. Capacity management, extremely important. So you will normally have a capacity management information system. That's what ITIL suggests you do. Okay, so there's another system. Bearing in mind, these systems start to now appear. Okay, and it's important that you understand what a system is. So this is an infrastructure library. ITIL is an infrastructure library. It tells you what would make a great, or which components would make a great IT service management system, and then you put all those pieces together. But the system is how you actually manage all of that at the end of the day. Slightly different focus on what this is. Obviously, availability management. You'll notice a few, for those of you who are involved in business continuity, information security, risk, and all that, that a few of these words start to creep in that might trigger some memory in another standard or compliance requirement that you have, like availability management. Service continuity management, that's ITSCM. There are standards for those as well. Information security management, ISM. And then, of course, supplier management is a standard for that as well. So all these processes are saying to you, in order for you to design your infrastructure for your service, you need these things in place. Okay, you've got to start thinking about them. You've got to address them. Even if when you address them, you say, actually, yeah, well, you know, we use a third-party supplier and the risk is somebody else's, and that's great and wonderful. So availability, no problem. Microsoft are going to do that for us. Cool. But then you need to qualify with Microsoft if they actually are going to do what they say they're going to do, because they don't always. Right, then that YANA in service design, a whole bunch of roles and responsibilities. Now, they're not saying run off and go and employ a whole bunch of people, although that might be the case if you've got a very wealthy company. What they are saying is you need to give somebody these accountabilities, and they need to be dedicated accountabilities. It can't be something that you stick on a shelf and you dust off and bring it out once a year, and you know, and that's what you do. You give a guy a job and you say to him, every 6 months you need to have a look at this. This is something they've got to live and breathe on a day-to-day basis for your service. So let's have a look at these. Service design manager, well, that makes sense since seeing this is a service design module. IT designer, that's very important, and architect, because obviously your networks these days are very, very complicated, particularly with security issues. And there are standards for those, by the way, loads of standards. So the network boys will have a bunch of standards that they comply with. Service catalog manager, I put there 20,000 because it's required by 20,000. Service level manager, now we start to look at two different standards. Okay, ISO 20, these numbers, by the way, in brackets are ISO standards that are available for you to read. I'll just put them there for you to look at later on that you can reference. 27035. The availability manager, if you're going to have a look at 27001, the controls within ISO 27001 is what I'm referring to, the back of ISO 27001. Those controls will tell you that you need to address these things in any case if you have a 27001 management system in place. IT Service Continuity Manager, if you look at 22301, which is business continuity, it talks about your services and your backup and your IT and your infrastructure. If you did a business impact analysis, what's important to you and what isn't. And there's a couple of other standards. So all of these roles that ITIL is suggesting you have are actually things that most companies would today have in place in any case. Supplier manager is your procurement or your outsourcing manager or whatever they are. So you see there's a standard there. And by the way, just a little punt there for PECB, all of these courses are available through PECB. Right. So now we have a look at the principles of service transition. Okay, so we've done our strategy, we've worked it all out of what we think we're going to do, we've looked at our competitive edge, we've gone through our service design, we've decided how our service is going to look and feel to the customer, what IT services are going to be party to the delivery of that. And now we say, okay, right, let's move this into live if we possibly can. Okay, there's obviously a point in which you are going into live where you will regress and probably not go into live if there's an issue. So you need to have some incident management in place. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. So the principles are the understanding of the service, establishing policies, very important that policies, and policies are for everyone. Okay, so this is very important to understand that policies are properly established so that when you go down to the organization, they understand how they support this whole infrastructure. Right, supporting knowledge and transfer, very important that knowledge is always transferred. We tend to have a lot of leavers who go with 25 years of knowledge and we forget to tap at least 10 years of that knowledge, probably the last 10 would be nice. So we end up having to employ 10 more people to replace one person. Okay, so knowledge transfer internally and externally is very important. Anticipating and managing course corrections. So obviously, yes, you are going to have change and you might come across an issue which says, oops, now we have to go around the corner, we can't go straight anymore. And so you make your plans accordingly. That's your project management side. And then ensuring service transition involvement throughout. Okay, this is important. This is letting everyone in the organization know why you're doing it, how they can support it, where they are, and where their efforts are required, etc., and what training is required. And when you look at ISO 20000, you'll see something that's very important regarding skills and competencies. Right, and then we go to the processes. Now, very important with transition is change. Change must always exist. You must always have change management. Doesn't matter if it's gone into live. Doesn't matter if you're going to change a nut and a bolt. Well, that might be a little silly, but if you are going to change something, it needs to go through a change management approval process. Okay. Service asset and configuration management. These top three and knowledge management are particular to service transition. Okay, because a lot of information is generated at this point. Okay, the other four are particular to service transition, but they also apply to other stages. So now you've got your transition planning and support. You've going to have all the teams that are going to be around to fix things if they go wrong, or to deliver things to a customer, or to make changes if necessary, or to monitor and or report back to regulators, or whatever the case is. Your release and deployment management, very important that you have a mechanism in which we are going to release something that you can redress and go backwards to what you had before. And also if you're putting something in place that you're not going to break something else. Okay, then service validation and testing. Now you've got it all in place. It's not hurting anything else, and you now test it and you see that it's okay, and you do an evaluation and you say, okay, yes, it's good to go, or no, we have to make some more changes, in which case you might go back to the service design area. You might even have to go back to strategy. Okay, so this is where the plan, do, check, act sort of cycle of things starts to play its part. Right. They don't, in the service transition, ITIL doesn't say anything too much about particular roles and responsibilities, because they say at this point in time, all the people that are necessary to do all the work have already been involved. And yes, you might need one or two other people just to help you with a few things. But generally, the senior and the governance roles have been established at this point. Right, so then you look at service operations. Now the thing is in live, and we say, oh, great, this is all wonderful. So this is about achieving the effectiveness to deliver customer value. Very, very important there. Okay, and if you look at the processes, okay, so event management. Okay, so something happens out there. It might not be an incident, it might not be any impact. It could just be a frustration of some kind, or it be something really good, actually. And you need to have something in place that monitors that event and does something with it, or not. You can also make the decision of doing nothing. So when you do your risk management and your AC profiles and those sort of things, you can do those sort of things. Right, so now you get incident management, very, very important, particularly if you have information security standards in your system, or if you have business continuity. You need to have a proper, they talk about incident management. An incident is defined in the standard, and you can go and have a look at it. I talk about response management. So if there is a problem or an incident or something, you respond to it, and then you have a structure in place that deals with it. Request fulfillment is obviously a customer-driven type thing. Is they will ask you to do something for them, and you'll either say yes or no, depending on the financials usually, or you'll go and deliver it for them. Access management, that is, now we start talking about business continuity type of thing, and information security, where it's who has access to the stuff, is it accessible, where is it accessible, and how accessible should it be. And then problem management, obviously, is just a problem. Okay, so something breaks and it needs to be fixed, or it needs to be diverted, or something needs to be diverted, and you manage the problems. Problems can escalate, and they can escalate into crises if you let them. So problem management, very important. Okay, and that's usually around your, I'm just going to go back on that slide. Usually a lot of this has to do with your service desk and those types of issue management. Ah, there you go. So if I have a look now, the functions that you need for service operation, you need a service desk. It also depends. When they say you need a service desk, it could be one person doing 3 or 4 of these activities in the ITIL Foundation. If you're a very small company with 4 people, you might be the service desk, and you might be the problem manager, and you might be highly unlikely, but you might well be. Okay, if you're a big, large organization, you will have, and you provide lots of services, lots of IT, then you will provide a service desk. Okay, so it's not size, it's not creating a size in any way. It just says if you can define this how you want to for your organization. So then there's technical management as well, which is obviously the way all the bits and pieces connect, and what goes wrong if either of those things disconnect or they break. And then there's the application management, which is the software and the controls behind the technology, which allows access and the provision of the service. And then, of course, there's a spelling mistake, my apologies. And then there's the IT operational management. Very, very important. Without management, you are in a lot of trouble. Okay, so this is the functions that you need for operations. Okay, and it's day-to-day management that they're talking about there. Okay, and then you might kick some of this back. If there's a big issue, you fix it, you find root cause, you find that there's an inherent design problem, you go back to strategy because it might be an expensive one. The guys will say, okay, yes, here's the money for it, we need to fix it, or no, we'll just live with the problem. Then you go to the design phase if they say it's okay to do, and then you back into your iteration, and then back into your service operation. Okay, so a lot of these things you can always go back to the start, and then go through the various stages again. Right, continual service improvement. This is maintaining value for customers. Now you'll find in a lot of the ISO stuff, they're always talking about improvement. And they talk about improvement at every single stage, at every single cycle. So we have a plan, do, check, act in maybe in some standards in the early strategic side, it's improving those. If it's part of the implementation operational side, it's improving. It's part of design, it includes all of that. Okay, and they talk about the 7-step improvement plan. You can go to the ITIL library and you can have a look at it. And it's these 7 items here, which is define what should be measured, define what you can measure, gather the data, process the data, analyze the data, present and use the information, and implement corrective actions. There's not always corrective actions. It might just be a nice to do thing. You're not correcting anything, you're just adding something in. So they do talk about this implement corrective action, but it doesn't necessarily have to be corrective in itself. Okay, so it's not always about problems, but anyhow. All right, and I just said there quickly, there's a few related standards when you're looking at the ITIL structure. These are, by the way, just some of them. It's by no means exhaustive. ISO 20000 comes in 5 parts, or there's 2 parts at the moment. I think the other 3 are still under development. The 3rd one might have been done. And I can tell you, well, no, we'll do that just now. ISO 27001, which is your information security standard. ISO 22301, which is your business continuity management system. These are all systems, by the way. These are compliance standards. There's Prince 2, which is, I just used that as an example. You can use any other project the management system that you like. I particularly like Prince 2, so I put it there. COBIT, which is really great. You've also got your controls within ISO 27001, and your capability maturity model integration, very nice. Oh, by the way, and PMBOK, Six Sigma. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can wrap into or around your service management system. Oh, by the way, and I just let a little note there that these things, I didn't have time to get the actual trademarks or the copyright notices, but they do apply. And PECB can actually train you on all of these things as well. There you go. So, what is ISO 20000, 20K? It's a standard, obviously. It's a compliance standard, an ISO standard. Now, I just have to say something about ISO. ISO have been trying over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, to get the same look and feel for their compliance management system standards. Okay, so they used to be a little bit all scatty, and now they are trying to get them into a place where section 1, 2, and 3 will all be the same in the standards generally, and the meat of the standard starts in section 4. I'll just give you a little bit of warning. It doesn't apply to this standard. Okay, so it's an information technology standard. It's for service management. If you have IT as your service background, or sorry, supporting mechanism, and this is part 1. Service management system requirements. This is a system requirement. This means that you have to kind of like have a system. Yeah, I think so, because it says system. Right. It's a compliance standard. You don't have to go and get certified to this, but if you apply this standard to show that your company is actually in a good place, then yes, maybe you might want to take the next step and get certified. And I would recommend you speak to PECB about being certified. I will also file a little warning there. Certification is wonderful to get, but it's very difficult to keep. So make sure if you are going to go and get certified, it's for a good reason. It's not a guide. Okay, so they will not make any recommendations on what you should do or how you should do it. That's ITIL. That's where you go, ITIL. Okay, you go there and you look at ITIL. It's also this is not a standard dedicated to ITIL. Okay, you could use it for COBIT or any one of the other ones. All right. So there you go. There's a description of a service management system to direct and control the services, management activities of the service provider. Right, there you go. So it's a management system. All right, that means managers need to be in charge of all of this. Otherwise, it's not going to work, or it's going to get chaotic, or the customers aren't going to get what they want, or things are going to go horribly wrong, and the business is going to face some serious incidents. Right, here you go, the ISO 20000 structure. Like I said, it's got 9 sections, okay? And I'm conscious of the fact I've only got about 10 or so minutes left. There's 9 sections, unlike most ISO management systems, right? Except for the first 3, those are pretty much what the other ISO standards look like. If there's section 1 is a scope, there's normative references, so that's the scope of the standard, by the way, not the scope of requirements. So of the standard, what is it? Who does the standard apply to? Who's it for? Who should do it? Blah blah. You can go and have a look if you've got the standard. I would suggest you buy a copy if you haven't. You're not supposed to share these things around because they've got copyrights around it. So, and they're quite inexpensive. Normative references are where a standard will include other standards as part of the requirements. This standard mentions some of them, but there's no normative references, so there are none in this standard. Terms and definitions, I'm just going to make a note on the terms here. You have to be very careful where you get your terms and definitions from. If you have a business that calls something, for argument's sake, an application, and somebody else calls it a program and a standard, you can still carry on calling your stuff an application, okay? But somewhere you need to identify the fact that the word you use means another word in a standard. And I'll tell you why. ISO are trying very, very hard to consolidate all their terms so that there is only one place where you will go and find out what the, and I'm using application as an example, what application means, okay? Unless in a particular standard, it means something very different to that category or that context of the standard. Okay, so go and make sure that you understand the hierarchy of terms and references. Okay, for argument's sake, if you look at the standard, it talks about it adapted a term from ISO 27001. It means it's not exactly what ISO 27001, and we're going to discuss it in a minute, would make the term. This is very important when it comes to auditors. Okay, so let's go and look at the other sections that are there. So there's 6 other sections. There's only 9 sections in this standard. There's 10 in the others. And if you look at the structure of ISO 22301, for argument's sake, section 10 on all the other management systems is continual improvement. Section 4 is usually top management, and so it goes. Okay, so this is very differently structured to most of the other ISO standards. So you've got, sorry, I just have to do something here. You've got these 5 requirements in ISO 20000 as they stand there. Okay, I'm just going to move on my notes here a little bit. Oh. Just bear with me for a sec. There you go. Okay. Right, so you've got the general SMS, that's a service management system requirements, by the way. So you normally you'll find with any of these any of the management systems, they always have MS. They shorted to MS. This will be the service management system. Okay, these requirements are very important, and wherever a clause says shall, you have to do it. You can't. If you're going to go for certification, you have to. If you're going to go for a I'm going to mention something that might be a little bit naughty. If you're going to go just for a tame tick in the box thing where it's not a formal certification, then yes, you can perhaps leave these things out. If, however, a shall doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means you need to address it and decide how you're going to address it. So you could say, actually, we have addressed it, and based on management, we're not going to do anything. Or we've addressed it, and this is what we're going to do. Okay, so just be very wary of the fact that where it says shall, you have to qualify what you're doing. And if that's nothing, you have to qualify why you're doing nothing. Right. Then the next 5 sections go into pretty much what the ITIL was saying, and it's 5 top things, maybe to a little bit. So you've got your design and transition of services, okay, your service delivery processes, relationship processes, your resolution processes, and your control processes, okay. Now what ISO 20000 does is in section 4, it sticks your plan, do, check, act stuff, okay. Right, I just want to, just on the issue of information security terms and references, I just want to say quickly, they do say it's adapted from ISO 27000. This is the reference for information security. So the term for information security, okay. It's the preservation of confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility of information, which is a little bit different to the 27001 definition. Okay, so just make sure that you decide which one actually matters to you. Because when an auditor comes, they're going to go according to that definition, the one that's in the standard, okay, unless it's a standard definition somewhere else. Right, so you've got your general service management system requirements, you've got management responsibility, very important. ISO are trying very hard, and they're getting it right finally, to get senior management to get properly involved in these management systems. In the past, these things used to sit down at middle to even lower management, and they used to just go and get a tick in the box. Now, unfortunately, management have to be involved. And they, on the first bullet in the 4.1, their management responsibility is management commitment. They want to see. You can't just say, oh, well, I put a manager in place and that's it, I've done my job. There's lots of other things now that the ISO standards are trying to get management to do. So are they party to continuing improvement? Are they party to this? Are they party to that? How do they go about promoting these management systems within the organization? Okay, so management commitment is very important. Okay, service management policy that we spoke earlier on in the ITIL thing, where it talks about policies. This could be a policy or a bunch of policies. It could be policies that are already existent, and you just got to go through them and make sure that the service management system is included in whatever policies you have. Okay, then who's in charge? Who's the authority? Who's responsible for all stuff? And who's how and who's going to do communication? Communication, very important in all the ISO standards. Okay, you got to tell people that there's a system in place for the company, for the organization, that they have to comply with it in whatever area, even if it's just to know about it, that's fine. And then, of course, there's got to be a management representative throughout the organization, depending on scope. It's a very important thing to remember. Hey? So when you do policy, design, and all that kind of thing, remember scope, because the scope is for the service management system. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to include the whole organization. Right. Then they talk about governance of other party processes. This is coming now in your supply chain. It's very important these days that you understand that ITIL is now, although ITIL is saying, yes, you've got to look at your outsourced products, what is happening now is in the standard, they're saying, how do you manage your third-party suppliers? Are you just doing arm's length transaction and saying, well, it's not my risk, it's theirs, which would be wrong. All the risk is your organization, doesn't matter who you give the work to. Okay, it's you are responsible for risk. ISO is going very hard on that the organization is responsible for risk, and you can't just send away the risk to somebody else and say, hey, it's not my problem anymore. Okay, document management, the control of document management. Auditors love document management because everyone gets it wrong. You don't have version. So yeah, they actually talk in the standard about what you have to have in your documentation, and they quite, I'll go a little bit in there. I'm conscious of the fact we're running out of time a little bit. You've got to establish and maintain documents. So there's a number of documents I tell you have to have. You've got to have documented service level agreements. Okay, so you can't ignore that. You've got to have it. You've got to have a documented catalog of services. Okay, you've got to have documented procedures and records. In other words, how do I change a document? Who changes it? Who authorizes it? Who's the review team? All that. Now, so you're not talking a complete set of document management. That little clause in that standard, well, it's not so little, is fundamental to the whole of your management system. This is where auditors will pick on you. Okay, so I'm going to move on quickly. Then they talk about 4.4 is resource management. So you see they're setting up, in other standards, these are broken into different sections, but yeah, they've lumped it all into section 4. So resource management, provision of resources, they talk about competencies and training and all sorts of things in the standard you need to go, and that's the human resources side of it. Okay, now in section 4.5, they chuck the whole PDCA. This is a Plan, Do, Check Act, and I've just broken it down for you there into this section. So defining the scope, and that's of the service management system. Your scope is very important. If you look at context of your organization, your service management strategy, you will then know what the scope is of compliance with this standard. Okay, what in the company is included for the service management system and what is auditable? Okay, because you can leave departments out, and you can leave buildings out, and you leave people out, but you have to define that, and you have to qualify it. You can't say, well, I'm only going to have this in scope. You got to then say why you haven't got the other lot in scope. Okay, so very important to always qualify why you haven't got something. Plan the SMS, implement and operate the SMS. I'm not going to go through all of these. Monitor and review, internal audit, very important in all the standards now. You've got to have an internal audit. You need to get your internal auditors involved. They need to find out what a service management thing is and get themselves jacked up. And the internal audit should be there to help you to comply. Okay, they shouldn't be punitive at all. Management review, very important. ISO is heavy on management review. There's a whole lot of stuff about management review. And then your continual improvement there at the bottom, maintain and improve. Okay, so that's basically section 4. It's the meat of everything, really, because that is the cyclical stuff. That's the plan. So with that, everything that's in there needs to go through a cycle when you do the next 4 sections. Right, so you've got now design and transition of service. This is new or change services, by the way. So there's general requirements. Again, they have these general requirements. Plan new or change services. You've got to have a plan. They tell you what you've got to have in the plan. Design and development of new change services. They tell you what you've got to do in terms of your, these are processes, by the way. So section 5 to section 9 are all processes. So in your processes, you've got to have all these things. There's lots of them. There's 250 odd requirements in ISO 20000. Eh? So obviously I haven't got the time to go through them. And then there's transition of new or change services. Okay, so all of that has to be in that process. You've got to define these things. You've got to say something about them. You've got to decide whether you're going to do something about it or not, or how you're going to do it if you are going to do something about it. Service delivery processes. Again, how am I going to manage my service? What's my service management going to look like? Service reporting. How are we going to structure reporting of good, bad, or indifferent, or change requests? Service continuity and availability management. Very important, okay? Service continuity and availability requirements, service continuity and availability plans. We're starting to talk a little bit of business continuity here, by the way. Eh? Service continuity and availability monitoring and testing. So if you've done a business impact analysis, you would know exactly what to do there. And if you want to do a business impact analysis, you need to look at ISO 22301. Right, then there's budgeting and accounting for services. Very important in ITIL. Is the money aspect of it. Very important to management, by the way. And when I talk about management, yeah, I'm talking about your board. Because hey, they only ever interested in money. Eh? So you need to understand, you need to convert your technical thoughts into monetary terms. And they actually tell you how to do that in ITIL, by the way. Okay. Then there's capacity management, which is extremely important. This is your information security management as well, which is information security policy. Yeah, you go. You got to have it. Now suddenly you got to have an information security policy. But you might already have one if you have an information security management system. Okay. And the controls, the information security controls, by the way, if you look at ISO 27001, they're all in the back there. A lot of auditors, if they know their stuff, will actually refer to those controls. They'll say, how are you doing? They won't tell you it's coming from there, but they'll refer to those controls. Okay, and those controls cover just about everything you can control in an IT infrastructure. And then changes and incidents. Okay, so this is again your release and your, if things go wrong and how you're going to manage it and how you're going to fix it and who you're going to report them to. Okay, then section 7 is relationship processes. They talk about customers in ITIL a lot. Okay, so this is now just embedding that you make sure you define your relationship management, how you're going to deal with people, how you manage those requests if a customer wants to change or if you want something new or different, how you do that, and usually your catalog would define a lot of the responses to that. And then of course supplier management is critical. It's getting more and more critical these days. As I've said, there's a standard on supply chain continuity. There's a standard on supply chain security. So supply chain is receiving a huge amount of focus. ISO 28000 is quite an interesting one to read, and so on. And resolution process. Remember earlier on I said to you they talk about incident in ITIL, and I prefer the word resolution or a response. Okay, how are you going to fix things? How's the hierarchy? Are you going to have a level 1 to 4 structure or level 1 to 10? How do you measure these things? How do you determine whether one is something? Who's managing it? How does it escalate? What are you going to do if you hit the crisis? How are you going to commute this? This is all incident and service request management. There is another standard on that as well too. If you really want to, if you don't have an incident structure or proper one or response management structure, there are lots of publications out there, and PCB can help you with those too. And then of course problem management. Okay, so that's the resolution process. Then you get control processes. Once again, IT is full of controls. Configuration and management, ISO 20000 brings that to light. It is inferred in ITIL, configuration management a lot. Okay, it is inferred and it is even mentioned. But now ISO 20000 brings us to the fore. A lot of people do not do their configuration management properly, and they get nobbled on this left, right, and center. And if you need a CMDB, then that's fine. You've got to run off and find one out of a million. There's hundreds of people selling CMDB packages. They're not all good. Some are very good. Change management crucial, as I've mentioned before. Change management exceptionally crucial, particularly in larger organizations where the risks are higher. Or where the service that they provide has a high level of risk, as well as massive consequences. Okay, so release and deployment management, very critical. You don't want to stick something out new, not like some of these vendors do. They just update your operating system and then it's defunct, and then you've got to wait for the next release because you can't regress because you went and wiped out your whatever it was that they stuck in the background. To revert back to. So very important that you do release and deployment management. Okay, so we've gone through pretty much this at high speed. There's a lot, obviously, that you need to, if you're new to all of this, there's a lot you need to read up. It's not difficult, it's just voluminous, okay, as IT is. Right, so let's have a look at compliance. Now, I've been around the compliance world for a lot, and I like to do compliance in a very pragmatic way. I don't go into compliance to be punitive or to punish people. I go to compliance because it's a requirement for some reason, and you need to meet the spirit of these things. You need to meet the spirit very well, though, as opposed to hardly meet it. So the compliance word is shall. Okay, so sorry, is this little window on the right-hand side? Is that? Oh, I didn't even think about that. I don't know if that's coming up on your screens. No, just do that. Right, so the word shall is what's important. Okay, so when you take on an ITIL framework, it's perfect for business seeking to align their IT and day-to-day ops and turn your IT infrastructure into an asset. Okay, so in the past, IT systems used to be considered an expense, and now they're all considered assets. Primary goal of ITIL is to turn traditional organizing with IT departments into IT service-oriented organizations. Cool, that's great. So that's going to make you a good business. That's what that's going to do. ISO 20000 says to people, actually, this company is really serious about it, and they're actually prepared to show that by going and getting certified and being compliant with ISO 20000. So it could be ITIL, it could be COBIT, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be ITIL, by the way. And that's why I say ISO 20000 is not standalone. It's not just for ITIL. It's for any service management system that uses information technology as its platform for delivery. Adamant documentation showing ISO 20000 practices, that's very important. Familiarity with processes and principles of ISO 20000, that's very important. You need to get into all these processes, even process map them. ITIL actually does. If you go on a course, they'll give you a process mapping thing. And you need to provide evidence that ISO 20000 processes are adhered to. Okay, so you've got to have records and things. It's all there in the standard. You can read up about it. So this is compliance, right? This is you going ahead and saying, I'm going to be certified or I'm going to comply. I don't necessarily have to go and get certified. If you do get certified, it's wonderful. It's great because it forces, and I hate using that word, but it forces senior management to take a perky interest in their management system, because if you lose your certification, you are going to have reputational damage that you do not ever want to have. Okay, so it'll suggest management role without prescription. It doesn't say you really have to. ISO requires senior, that's top management, they call it top management, involvement. It says commitment, Boom, go look at 4.1. Go and look at all the things that top management have to do. They can't disassociate themselves from responsibility here, or commitment. ITIL refers to a catalog and various references to documentation. Okay, ISO 20000 requires specific document management, including that of the presence of a catalog and policies and other things. Okay, so it's very specific. ITIL doesn't tell you how you must do it or what the content of the document must look like, but just says you've got to have one and it's got to have certain things. ITIL refers to human resources and roles. So it says, yeah, it'd be nice to have an incident manager. ISO 20000 says, oh, hang on a minute, you must determine what you need and the competencies those people must have. That's a very important difference. So training, skills matrix, all those kind of things come into the equation. Right, so that's a little bit about compliance, sure. Okay, so just telling you that ITIL is an infrastructure. ISO 20000 is something you must do. Okay, sure, as they say. Right, I'm going to go quickly through this because I'm only got 10 minutes left, and I need you guys to have your time for questions and answers. So let's go with quick one on auditors. You can read this, by the way. What I'm saying to you is, you know, in fact, go on an auditor course. If you're an implementer, go on an auditor course. Then you know exactly the parameters around which an auditor is allowed to and I use the word bullying in light term because sometimes they do bully you. You look at the picture down the bottom there on that page. You know, that's the guy sitting on his own. There's a guy being audited, and there's a whole bunch of auditors making you feel terribly uncomfortable. The style of auditing has changed over the years, but there are some people that still like to test the parameters a little bit. So it's important to know what an auditor is allowed to do, what their parameters are to do, and where they are allowed to ask questions and to what level they're allowed to request evidence. Okay, because sometimes they ask for things that they're not actually entitled to. Okay, and so what I say is do an internal gap analysis. If you're uncomfortable in using your own people because there's the familiarity thing, then just get somebody else from external. I'm available. Do an internal gap analysis. Get an internal audit done by your audit team. It's very, very good that you start there. Okay, and you can read the bits and pieces. There's always good stuff in an audit and compliance. Okay, there's always good things that come out, or should be, where an auditor will help you to improve for the next cycle of your audit. And then, as I say, there are the not so good. Okay, so some auditors are punitive. It's becoming less and less. Watch the commercials. Okay, so some auditing companies, they seem to have stopped that now, although I've noticed a few. They will try and spend a lot of days doing a lot of things because it's of value to them in terms of monetary reward. Okay, sometimes these audits can be a lot shorter than what they actually are, is what I'm saying. Okay, and that's when you get more efficient with your stuff. Your audit cycles become less, and you then senior management are not so much involved in audits because it becomes quite efficient. Okay, you don't want to take your senior management out for every single compliance standard that you've got every 5 minutes. All right, I do say there the audit report is final. Is it? You can challenge any audit report you get. You can challenge it. Please remember that you can challenge it. Okay, you don't just do it for challenging sake. Do it because there's something technically correct or contextually incorrect in the document or missing. Right. And by the way, you'll find ISO, the bottom bullet there, ISO are now producing competencies for auditors. They haven't done one for service management system yet, but they have done it for business continuity, information security, and one other, I can't remember. So there will be a ISO compliance standard of the requirements of auditors, which you can then request of an auditor. So there you go. I'm sorry I had to rush through a lot of that. I've left a little bit of time for questions and answers, but before we go into that, I would just like to tell you that please go and visit the ISO website. The link is down the bottom there of that page. Go and have a look at the ISO 20000 courses that are offered. There's an introductory course, a foundation course, a lead implementer course, and lead auditor. One is 1 day, one is 2 days. Sorry, introduction is a 1 day non-exam. Foundation is a 2-day exam. Lead implement is 5 days with an exam on the 5th day, and the same with audit is also 5 days with an exam on the 5th day. These are fantastic courses. I've given a lot of them, and let me tell you, the quality of PECB's material is second to none. In fact, it's better than much. I haven't seen better. Is the answer to that. And I have looked at other people's training material over the many years that have been doing all of this. So there you go. That is the training, do go and have a look at PCB's website. There's lots of other nice stuff there as well on business continuity and information security and risk management and outsourcing and security, cyber, nice stuff, and penetration testing, and really good stuff. So do go and have a look. Thank you. It's been my pleasure, and we can now take questions and answers. Sorry, I'll give you the 15 minutes you should have got.
Thank you, Eugene, for this great presentation, and thank you for introducing PCB training and certification services. Before we proceed with the Q&A session, I just wanted to point out once again that PCB certificate on ITIL and 20K will exemplify your dedication in implementing and managing processes and frameworks, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. Now we will go ahead and take some time to answer some of the questions from the attendees regarding today's topic. The first question is, what is the difference between business continuity and service continuity management?
That's a very good question. Right. Service continuity management really focuses on the engine room of an organization. Okay, so maybe your operational equipment that produces your service. Okay, business continuity looks more at the overarching capability of the business to respond to problems and resolve business issues to a pre-planned level. Okay, so business continuity would look at your people of the whole organization. It'd look at your premises. It'd look at all the key things that are important to your business. Okay, whereas service continuity will look at the components relative to that part of the operational arm. I hope that's answered the question.
Yes, thank you, Eugene. And now the second question is, can you say a few words about the new ISO 20K structure that is expected to be published soon, most likely next week?
Yeah, I quite like the structure. Look, ISO are going through and have been going through a number of phases with many of the standards. They started with the information security one. Business continuity, the business continuity standard, because it was developed recently, if you can call it recently, it actually was the structure that is now being adopted for all the other standards. So they will migrate the structure across. At this stage, they can't do that completely with ISO 20000. They have to leave it pretty much in the service management framework of components. Okay, so my gut feel is with ISO 20000, although it's not going to look like all the other management system standards, it's going to be a very easy standard to implement, because it goes in. If you were putting a new IT infrastructure in place, you would probably take that as the A to Z of how to do it.
Great. Now, because of the time limitation, we will only answer one more question, and the rest of the questions will be answered by email. So, what is the best option of IT system validation?
Okay, there's two things you need to do here. Okay, and I'm going to very quickly say, one is you need to test your stuff. All right. So however you test it, whether you get a consultant and you do walkthrough plans and you do whatever you do, that will tell you realistic. If you'd run realistic there's exercising and testing. Not many operations directors will let you test. They let you exercise, but won't test. So let's switch off some stuff and see what happens. Type testing is really very good. Not many people will do that. That is the right way to do it, but it's expensive, it's risky, and you're highly unlikely to get sign off on it. The other way, of course, is to run exercises and to validate your entire system to say, actually, we're doing things properly, get certified to ISO 20000. It really is. I tell you, I've taken companies through certification and recertification. It's valuable for you as an implementer, because you know what? The whole business suddenly starts to understand what you're doing. And it's not going to happen overnight. One place, it took 3 years before they actually started to understand what it was that I was trying to tell them. So you have to be a little bit patient with management systems, and certification is a wonderful place to start.
Thank you, Eugene, for this great session, great and informative session, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. I would like to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website as well as on our YouTube channel together with the slides of the presentation. For more information about the PCB Insights Conference that I mentioned at the beginning of the session, or our upcoming webinars, you can visit our website www.pecb.com. Thank you all and have a great day.